Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show, Women of Consciousness podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about getting back to simplicity, and we're very excited about this topic. But before we get into this topic, I wanted to invite you to like us on Facebook at Women of Consciousness, on Instagram at Women of Consciousness, and we will be doing some updates on some services that we are providing. The goddess circles right now is what we are doing. So if you want to be invited to that, just go to the Facebook. We also have it on womenofconsciousness.com if you want to go to our website, read all about us, figure out who we are. Our faces are on there as well, so you can see what we look like. And also here on this podcast, you can see that as well. So awesome. But we invite you to get involved, and we're excited about that. So today's topic, as expressed, we're going to be getting back to simplicity, which is it sounds easier than what it is. And I think there are a lot of people who are trying to understand how to declutter, get rid of, and live a simple life. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have overcomplicated things, especially here in America, but even worldwide, where things have been so complex that our brain is trying to fix something that's not wrong. And part of this, part of what Pam and I have been doing is reading the Gene Keys. And if you guys don't know what that is, a really amazing book. And Richard Rudd wrote the book. Whoever helped him edit this book did an amazing job. So he must have had amazing editors on this book because the read is very simple,
Mm.
very easy,
Mhm.
and it's very eloquent too, right? I think it's
Yeah.
it's a very eloquent way that it's written. It's a beautiful book.
Right.
So yeah, I was just like, God, like I want to work with his editors because
Yeah.
it's done really nicely. So excuse me. So the Gene Keys, um, the cool things it talks about the kind of the DNA, it uses the yin yang, the I Ching, which is really kind of cool. Since I'm in Kung Fu, I really resonate with the way that he's laid the book out. Um, but one of the keys that we were talking about, and Pam and I had read, is a 23rd key. And I think eventually we'll go through the keys together on here on this podcast. But the 23rd key is about simplicity, and it's the alchemy of simplicity.
Mhm.
Of course, with Pam and I being spiritual alchemists, we like the word alchemy in there. I do.
Yep.
So, but how do we get from complexity? Because if you look at the city, it's quintessence. I can't say that word, you guys, so I apologize. And then
Quintessence.
quintessence, yes. And then the gift is simplicity, and the shadow is then complexity. So the way that the book is kind of, set up is that it has, the shadow side, the gift side, and then the city, which is like the ultimate kind of place you want to
Divine
get
gift.
where you'll get to. Yeah, it's the divine gift. So yeah, thanks, Pam.
No problem. That's what I'm here
It's the
for.
divine. Um, and then it's has a physiological aspect to it. So it is the thyroid and the throat, which is kind of cool. And then there's like these other keys that it could be connected to help you kind of understand it to its full potential. But the complexity, right, that we live in today, and like he says, it's the result of the human mind trying to control its environment. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. So the more it says, the more that humans try to use their minds to create feelings of security in the world, the more complicated and unsafe the world becomes. And so we think that we're living in this unsafe world. So we're constantly trying to figure out ways to make it safe and basically overcomplicating the process of just existing in the world.
Mm.
Um, which and it makes sense because I mean, if you look, okay, so if you look at other animals, it's not that they're not maybe that they don't have these fears or this survival mode, right? But they're not living in that state of being all the time. It's only when they know a predator's near or whatever, we create predators in our mind that are not even there. So it's like creating these phantom predators. Um, and then putting ourselves in a state of anxiety and fear. So we feel like we have to fix something. So then we're like, oh, well, we'll create this, we'll create this, we'll create this. Now we're living in fear of these bigger narratives of like global warming, all these things that we're trying to fix, that they become big, they call big issues, right? And I'll bring in another kind of theory that we talk about, which is living systems, kind of works that way. It looks at these big problems and tries to say, how do we fix this? When the reality is, maybe there's nothing to fix. Maybe it's just get back to simple.
Mhm.
And, but how do you do that, right? Because our mind, we have some insight, but our mind really does have this need to like fix things and find a safe environment and like kind of move away from anything that's going to harm us or try to fix something we feel is going to harm us, which the only thing I think of right now is like global warming, right? That's like a huge one right now, or that we're going through a massive um what's it called, distinction, right, like
Oh,
right
yeah.
now.
Yeah,
And
math.
so
Yeah.
extinction, not distinction. Extinction. Thank you. You're gonna have to fix my language today because
All right,
something's
I'll
literally.
I'll be your editor.
Thank you. I think you're a good editor. Um, oh my god, so funny. Extinction, not distinction. I don't know what I was saying. Anyway, but mass extinction is happening around the planet, and we're trying to fix those issues. Maybe nothing needs to be fixed. Maybe we just need to get back to simple and let
Mhm.
things just play out the way they're supposed to. Not easy. Um, so yeah, so is there anything you wanted to add to the gene keys? I know there's a lot you probably have to say in this particular gene key in terms of complexity anyway.
Um, no, I mean, I like this because that's definitely right. When I think when we feel those phases of I need to declutter, and especially when you do a lot of work internally, and then it just naturally, like that external space, right? You just want to declutter. You just want simple around you. And I think we're definitely a culture where material items
Mhm.
right, either show your status or it fills a void, all of those things. And then obviously like hoarding, people I think who have a lot of trauma and loss and emotional, you know, um, just pain and suffering, like it's easy to become like a hoarder and hold on and become attached to things. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think just trying to understand that about yourself, right? Because it is the shadow, the complex part. So I think the more that we become aware of like the environment and like what we're trying to control and the things that we have around us, and just purging and releasing and just kind of letting go. I agree. Even the mental space, I think, right? We make it so complex. We overthink, we overanalyze, we just get lost on the hamster wheel within the
Yep.
monkey mind. And it's like, just we're worried about bills and, all of these things that just weigh on you because it's responsibility, is it deadlines. And so I think even just trying to clear the mind and live with a simple mind
Yep.
can be
I think so
empowering.
too. And it's not easy too, because like it sounds easy. Like you're like, yes, I want to declutter. I want a simple life, a simple space. But the attachment does show up too, right? That's the big piece of it. And then we overanalyze, especially for those logical, analytical thinkers, me being one of
Mhm.
them,
Oh,
is
yeah.
that not everything needs to be, looked under a microscope,
Right.
and I think I've heard that from so many people in my life, like you're reading into it more than what it is. Like, it's like, I just said this one thing. I don't know. And me, I'm like, okay, there has to be this, and then I'm just constantly like digging, 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 digging.
Hmm.
And it's like, you have to have this like answer to this thing. And it's like, and it's like, okay, it wasn't that. So I have to learn to let go. And I think it's letting go of the attachment. And also, something that you said is as within, so without. And this, I learned this really early on because I have what they call, well, ADHD or chronic PTSD, whatever, however you want to call it, right? But the I have this when there's too much stuff in my space, I start to get anxiety. So
Mhm.
I have to declutter. It's for my mind to work properly. So even when I'm in school, for instance, especially when we're doing the master's program, I couldn't write my papers unless my place was completely clean. Like I
Mm.
couldn't have any visual noise happening. So that's kind of the best way I could describe it. Like if there's a bunch of stuff in my view, I start to feel like it's overwhelming too much.
Mm.
So I used to literally like the process I would do is like clean, get rid of stuff, have the space wide open. And I think that's a lot of what the Gene Keys talks about is like having open spaces, right?
Yeah.
And breathing room to, and then once I was able to do that, my mind was clear. So it was like as within, so without. So I always tell people like, if you ever see my space in like disarray and you see this stuff everywhere and you're just like, what is all this stuff? It's because my mind is cluttered. And I know that. And it's like, okay, and for me to like understand that what's happening internally is showing up externally. And so I have to like, okay, now it's time to really like clean things out, organize the space, get rid of stuff because my mind it has too much stuff going on, so it becomes overly complex. So simplicity is something that I've been really working on, and I will get rid of stuff. I'm opposite of a hoarder where, I would love to just be a minimalist. I even went and bought all kinds of clothes and I'm like, I'm never wearing them. I wear the same thing every like almost every day. It's the same outfit, right? So it's like I doing? Like, let's be real, like, do I need all these clothes really?
Oh,
Probably not.
man. You're
You know
preaching
what
to
I'm
the
saying?
choir.
I know. Like, I wear the same kind of black pants and then the black shirt, and that's it. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, I have all these cute clothes," and I'm like, "I am never gonna wear this. I'm just not," you know? So
Yeah.
I end up giving away stuff, but the declutter and the simplicity, and what it has to offer us, and I like how the book talks about how people that hold this key hold all the keys, and I kind of agree with that. I mean, I looked at my chart, I don't know if the 23rd is, but I'm like, "This is a part of who I am." I've always
Mm.
been a pretty, like, throw everything away, let's just live in the woods and keep it simple. Um, so yeah, I do agree with you, and I think as within, so without. So I think what I would say just to listeners is, like, really look at your space, right? Look at everything around you. If you're a hoarder, that's fine, but then it would be like, well, what's happening internally? Or what are you afraid to let go of?
Mm.
If you're not a hoarder, but you just have too much stuff in your space, what's keeping you from actually decluttering? And what in your mind, because it's as within, so without, what in your mind are you not letting go of, right? So that there's this spaciousness and this ability to find simplicity, and there has to be space for that to occur.
Mhm.
That means you're getting rid of the junk, you know?
Yeah.
Not the junk in the trunk. No, I'm just kidding. Just get rid of the junk.
Trunk in the trunk.
I
Oh.
don't know. I had to say that, sorry, but
No, I
it's a
love
little
it.
off.
It's funny.
Don't get rid of the junk in the trunk. Everybody's liking the junk in the trunk.
Right? I like my booty. I don't wanna lose that.
We're not trying to get rid of the booty. We're trying but we are trying to get rid of the clutter and the stuff and living a very simplistic lifestyle. And this is like a thing that's caught on for I think a lot of people. The tiny homes thing, right? I
Yeah.
think is a big one. That's a big way to like say, hey, I just have kind of what I need.
Yeah.
Maybe just getting back to living in the woods, basically, the basics of life, not overdoing it, but that's hard. A lot of people love their luxury and stuff like that, but the simplicity is just like very simple life. You don't need all these extra bells and whistles. You don't need fancy clothes. You don't need all the accessories that come with it, right? You're just basically existing with what is,
Mhm.
nearly existing with what is, because I don't think I could go back to like the full primal, like walking around naked. Like, I think I still need
Oh, man.
clothes.
Are you kidding me? I love walking around naked. Oh,
I know, so
I
I'm
got
just
time
saying.
alone this weekend without the kids in the house, and, like, I just spent the whole time naked. I was trying to, like, go out onto my porch to deal with stuff and, when I was cleaning or whatever, and I had to, like, peek out. I had neighbors that were walking at one point down the driveway, and I'm just like, "Come on, why can't why can't I just, be able to not have to worry about this?"
That's,
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing. I mean, I in my when I'm alone, I could do it, but I don't think I could do it like, just full on. I mean, there was a so I'm sorry, this might be a side note, but I'm just saying there's this in Albuquerque, right, where I was born and raised, man, everybody's getting naked over there. This lady literally was just walking down the road naked.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. That's what I mean. I don't think I could be that simple. I think I
Yeah.
need when I'm in public, I think I'm gonna put clothes on.
I don't know. I've gotten to the point where I feel safe in my yard. Like I've got a few spots where I know I can kind of hide because the neighbors aren't that close. Like I do live in the country, but I also share a driveway road with two other, homes. So I have like a couple of good spots because I like to sunbathe, and
Mm.
so I'm just like, all right, screw it, I don't care. I'm just gonna find a spot. I feel safe. No one can see me here. But or at night, like I'll kind of go outside and yeah, like just want to be by the fire or especially when I was doing like baths and moon rituals. So it was just connecting and being in that, like you said, primordial, right? Sense of self.
Uh-huh.
And yeah.
Yep.
And then plant
Well,
medicine, my goodness, that's a whole nother thing whenever whenever I'm in the retreat. But it's gotten to a point where it's like it's funny because I did oh man, I went heavy into a psilocybin journey in the beginning of April because I was in a heavy space and there was a lot of healing. And I felt suffocated. I always feel suffocated by the clothing, right? And it's like sometimes I've
mm,
had an existential crisis from it attached to identity. And so this time I had this sweater that was over me. And so I couldn't really function or anything. But I knew I needed to go to the bathroom, right? So to get up off my mat and then it's like those Bambi legs. And it was like, okay, well make sure you're covered, right? Under your sweater you're naked, but just make sure like you close it up and because it's that dignity and respect, it's like I don't need for everybody to see me, but I want to be comfortable in the skin and in the flesh and the simple, part of just my body.
yep.
So it's been a really beautiful kind of relationship with self that's evolved. And I think that in it too is right the DNA transmuting and transcending from that shadow as we're healing it. That's where it goes into the gift. Then you again continue to transmute, transcend, and you go into the divine gift, the city.
Yeah. Yep.
So to be able to read the book, I think it's really awesome to understand like your DNA and how it was programmed. There are certain things that you just resonate with, certain sentences that pop out of the book, and you're like, "Oh yeah, that was me," and oh, okay, that's where I'm at now. And that's what I found really, really helpful. Um, yeah, so
Yeah. I know.
yeah,
So, I'm
doing
not
that.
like I said, I'm not saying I don't like being naked. I'm just not ready for the whole like in front of people, everyone. But
Right. Yeah.
but
No, I need
I
to.
mean in Europe,
Yeah.
I've walked on the nude beach. Like people do it. They don't care. And it's funny because it's like they're at a point where they just don't care. And it's like so liberating because it's not seen as this weird like the nude beaches aren't like I didn't see them as like this weird I mean, I was the weirdo because I was clothed and I was just walking, which is just funny because I'm the only clothed person on the nude beach. But I was just, because I was taking a long walk along the beach, right, or along the water, whatever, the shoreline. And so, I was just walking, and of course, I came to the nude beach as I walked, and I was walking past them, and I just wanted to take a long walk, but I was observant, just noticed that like there's not this weird vibe around it. Like nobody cares. You know what I mean? It's like
Mm.
everybody's just like whatever. And there's different shapes and sizes and people and whatever it is. And, and it's just yeah, it's just people are just comfortable and in
Mm,
their own skin, you know what I mean? And and that's how we started, right? We didn't start with clothes on, so I think that is probably the most simple, basic way that you can be and fully exposed, to be honest with you. Um, but to find comfort in your own skin like that is like you'd have to be very simple, right? You'd have to be able to rip down things to simplicity because at our base level, we're just, we're skin and bones, and that's really what it is.
mm,
Clothes just kind of protect us from well, they used to they protect us from the sun and stuff like that, certain people, right? Because we don't have the melanin in our bodies to like, so we have to like clothe up, but that really was kind of be to protect our skin. It wasn't necessarily because we were ashamed of our bodies, I don't think. You know what I mean? I know the Bible
right.
says that and other but I don't think that's what it was. I think it was more like we gotta protect our skin, and then it became a, "Well, you better not show it now." You know what I mean? It became this like but when you're like, again, on the nudist beaches, it's not like that. It's not uncomfortable.
Mm,
It did I was like, I could see myself doing this.
right.
You know what I mean? And then I think it's a level of comfort, but I couldn't do it in a place with a bunch of clothed people. That would just be weird.
You're the only one naked. Everyone else is wearing
Well,
clothes.
everybody has clothes on. But if they're naked, I think,
Mm,
I think that somehow it just because it's not weird, people aren't all like, "Oh, the body," or something. They're just doing their thing. No one cares.
right.
And I kind of felt that same thing with, when I went to Ibiza because everybody is half naked there.
Mm,
It's part of the culture, and nobody was there wasn't this weird energy about the body, you know what I
yeah,
mean? It wasn't like people were trying to grope it or, um, they were just it was just like, "Oh, yeah, another person half naked, who cares?"
right.
It's like we didn't make so much about it,
Mm.
But I think if we get to the base of it and the simplicity and, like, going off on a tangent about naked people, this is great. I didn't think it was gonna go this way, but
It just takes us where it takes us. But I think too, like maybe the thing is in America, right? It's so over sexualized. Like the female body, right? It's
Right?
almost like it's
Like, it's
uh, disrespected just for men's pleasure, right? When you think
yeah,
about
yeah,
Victoria's Secret, like kind
yeah,
of, it's
yeah,
sure they're aiming it and targeting for women, but I don't know. I think a lot of it is for men's
oh,
visual
yeah,
enjoyment and pleasure.
uh-huh,
And
yep,
so
yep,
there's this a lack of safety because then
yeah,
we have violence, we have rape, which I know is everywhere, but I think like it's just as women, we feel a lot more body shame
yeah,
because TV commercials, movies, everything is sexualized towards the feminine body more so than the man's body. So that
yep.
we can't feel safe without feeling somehow as a target or a victim or a shame. Um, unless you're, a teenager who hasn't really had children and is kind of in that perfection peak. I feel like teenagers, they don't care. They'll wear anything and or nothing, and then again it still becomes like over sexualized. It's why
Mhm.
schools have coded clothing, rules and stuff to try and keep that because they know these, hormonal adolescents are just everywhere. And so at the forefront, it's trying to keep it in check. And so I don't know, but I'm curious about, yeah, like what it would truly be like to live in another country where it's not, over sexualized and over like maybe stimulated to the visual aspect that we have now.
It's comfortable. I mean, I
Mm,
know that. I can say from my perspective, it felt comfortable and safe, and, like, I
yeah.
think that, you know, that was my experience. I was like, "Oh, I could see myself actually doing this," you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, because I can see that it wasn't like no one gave 2 craps, that's why. I think
Right.
that's what it was. No one was, like, gawking or this or that, it was just like, whatever. No one cared, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's, it just there was this comfortability about it, and I think I would imagine, like, that right there is like to be able to fully expose yourself. And I think that's like the simplest way we could be, right? And that just getting back to the topic, right? I know it was like a
Mhm.
little tangent or whatever, but it is true
Right.
that
Well, even clothes have gotten so complicated, where you're kind of judged for the clothes that you wear. I remember when I was a kid, at least, like, oh my God, that was the biggest thing that kids got made fun of and bullied for, is like if your pants didn't go to your ankles, it was like, I remember kids being like, oh, are you waiting for a flood with your high waters? And so there was so much judgment about you as a person based on the clothes that you wear. Um, so to kind of just break from that and just show up in your flesh and be like, this is who I am, I don't need clothes to define me. Or I think that is a core of simplicity, like you said, right? Getting back to that more primordial kind of energy that we come from.
yeah, or just having one outfit and not having so many. Like that to me is like, I had so much like that. If anything, the most that I have is clothes, and like I
Yeah.
get rid of them. And it's funny because I get rid of them, but then I somehow end up with
Yeah.
more. And
Yeah.
it's funny. I know that I'm buying the more clothes, but it doesn't make sense to me how there's just more clothes. I don't know. It's funny. It's a thing in my brain. And I'm like, get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it. So what I do is purge constantly. Like I think I've never had an issue with um getting rid of things. So I think when it comes to this particular key, I think that's probably the hardest challenge that some people would have to go through is to be able to part from certain things that they have.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? People want to hold on to and simplicity is like letting go of. It's
Right.
it's releasing the unnecessary so that you end up with just the necessary. Like for instance, um, with me, like, okay, for instance, some people have maybe 5 different dish sets in their home, and there's maybe 2 people. Why? I'm like, I don't, because I'm practical and simplistic, right? It's not that they're right, wrong, good, or bad, but that doesn't speak to this particular gene key of simplicity.
Mhm.
I'm like, really, if I wanted to even get more simple, I would say I would have 1 bowl, 1 plate, 1, you know what I mean? Because 'Cause
Mhm.
I'm by myself, but I didn't. I had a set of 4 in case I had guests, which I didn't get used very often, but it was funny because when I moved into, my last apartment, I remember when I was moving and I had friends help me, they were like, "Is that all you have?" Like, they were kind of all of them were freaked out, and I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "You don't have anything." I said, "No, I have everything I need."
Right.
And it's the truth. I didn't have to buy anything. I had everything I needed and I survived just fine. And a lot of them were like, "God, we really need to do that." Like I really need to like in their mind they realized that they had too much stuff just because they saw how much I had, which was not to them was not a lot. And to me it was too much. I'm like, I still need to get rid of stuff. You know what I mean? Like let it go. I don't need all these things. My
Mhm.
cabinets were not full. You know what I mean? I didn't need to have full cabinets. And again, it was just me. I think with a family it's a little bit different, right? But just to
Right.
have enough and not to have excess. And that so the simplicity is like declutter, let go of. Um, I'd be able to just minimize things to live the most simple life. And part of it would be like, and there are people who talk about this, like wearing, just having the same outfit, not even having to think about it,
Yeah.
or having 7 pairs of socks. Or, I mean, you could get really, really simple with this stuff, right? Like super simplified. And I would say my life isn't as that simplistic, um, but it is. And you know what I mean? And I'm constantly decluttering. So I don't have a whole lot of stuff that I don't need, basically.
Mm.
And but again, it's the part of letting go. And it's hard for people who are or it's difficult for people who are have attachments to things, you
Right.
know?
No,
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, I've
Especially children. You try and throw away like kids' toys and clean out their room. Oof, man, they have never wanted a toy that they haven't seen in 2 years more than they do that moment that you're about to throw it away. Broken stuff, right? Like people that hold on to broken things. I agree. Like my issue is definitely clothes. I got my bedroom with my closet and my dresser, and have my office, which also has a closet. So I've got my clothes in here. And I really like dresses. Like I have a range of like just spring and summer dresses to like more fancier, kind of gowns or whatnot that I really just enjoy. And I'm just like, well, someday I'm going to go somewhere and I'll have a nice trip and I'll be able to wear these. And I kind of got out of that mentality and I'm like, why am I waiting? Like, I'm going to wear them now. And I find ways, I do them in my own spiritual practices. If I'm going to have a full moon ceremony, if I'm tapping into like goddess energy, like I'll get dressed up for that, and make that kind of more special. Or I'm just trying to wear them more out in public and not care. Like I don't need an occasion or reason to look freaking amazing in a dress that, maybe you'd only wear to a prom or like a dance or something, but my thing is like when I pack, I like options. So I overpack when I travel. A weekend trip will have a clothes for like a week. And so that's where I have a hard time breaking it down to simplicity because I'm like, I don't know what the weather's gonna be. Like I get cold easy, so I want some layers, and then like I don't know. So I know I have work there for sure where I can maybe kind of let go of a little bit and just pack like 3 days for 3 days. Um, but anything else in my life, I'm definitely like, let's get rid of it. And like same thing, I just recently did my cupboards and cleared out. I was like, I don't need this many coffee mugs. Like I don't need this, this much like Tupperware. Especially like the lids that you can never find the bottoms that match. Like, why do I have a drawer full? And so yeah, just chucking and get rid of things. And the
Mhm.
kids, it's hard with kids. I stopped buying a lot of things, right? The holidays, I think, and like birthdays, you're just so used to and programmed to like buy and buy and buy. It's like they don't need anything. They
Yep.
realistically have everything they need. If
Yep.
anything, it's just the sizes that they grow through,
True.
replace the clothes, right? And I try and give away what they've outgrown to people that I know. This way I feel like I'm at least kind of passing it on in a positive way. Um, but it's hard because the kids definitely have a lot of needs and wants that kind of are things that they don't really need though. So I've tried to make it more simple. So at Christmas, I'd rather have a family vacation and go and actually have an experience.
Mhm.
I'm not going to
Yep.
buy things that you're not going to touch. So I'm grateful that I've been able to shift out of that space.
Yeah, and I think this gene key has lived within me my whole life. Like I think I understood it my whole life too, because in, when we were children, that was the biggest thing for me. Like, come Christmas, whatever, my mom or dad, whatever, what do you want? And I would be like, that to me, that question was weird because I
Mm,
was like, I don't really want anything. Like I have everything I need. Like I could never
right.
understand that question. Um, and so for me, it was like, if I did want something, it was always like once in a while. And it usually was like a specialty item that was way expensive, right? Usually.
Mhm.
But it was like rare that I ever wanted anything because I
Right.
was like, I never really understood what that meant. Like I never wanted anything. I was like, I have food, I have clothes, and that's really all I need and shelter. Like those things made sense to me. It was simple.
Yeah.
Um but, and so the materialistic world didn't make sense to me and the consumption world. And it was funny because I was kind of talking to my sister about this, like every once in a while, I think as I got older, just kind of this consumer culture. I think it sort of started to resonate with me for a little bit because it's like I feel like I have to experience this human aspect of things, right?
Mhm.
Not that before, but um where I'll start like buying stuff, right? And then there gets to a point where I start to get nauseous from it. It
Oh, wow.
disgusts me. So
Yeah.
I've never really had that connection to consume, 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 consume,
Mm.
and it makes me wanna throw up, honestly.
Yeah.
I have this disgust or distaste for it, and that's why I'm constantly getting rid of stuff because I'm like, "What in the world is all this excess stuff?" And I get anxiety overwhelmed with it, you know what I mean? It's, like, too much for me, um, and I'm like, that's why when people are keep getting and getting, I'm like, "Whoa," like, honestly, even, like, food, overconsumption of anything in excess to me,
Mhm.
certain things, not all things, but certain things, I get, like, nauseous about
Right.
it. It makes me, like, sick to my stomach, and I'm like, I can't like, I never went into stores. So, like, as a child, like, I hated shopping. I was the kid that was, like I sat in the car. I would sit in the car while
Oh.
my sister and my mom would go into the stores. I hated it. I
Mm.
absolutely hated it. I'm like, "When is this gonna be over?" And then my clothing was very questionable. I think as I got older, I'm like, "Wow, I really did look like a hobo kid." But I and if people made fun of me, I was a kid that didn't care. I was like,
Right.
"Yeah, so what?" It's like, I was like, That's how I'm comfortable. I'm sorry you don't like it. I don't know what to tell you." But I was the kid that just didn't care, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I just wanted to live simple. So this key resonates with me so much because I can say that as I got older, I became more complex with my stuff, but I'm still very simple, but not as simple as I'd like to be or like to live, I would say. And it's hard because we live in this very complex world even in my food, which I think I might have said it on here probably before, and I think I've told you, like, even when I go to the restaurants, right, I'm like, "Okay, I want this, but I don't want all of the seasoning, all of the things, I just want it simple." And that
Right.
is a complex question or request. So my simplicity has become over complex for the complex people, which is just weird because it's that, like, paradox thing, right? It's like
Right.
how is my so I'd rather just eat at home, and I can eat just the same things over and over again, and I don't need you know what I mean? So
Mm.
it's like I can live a simple life,
Yep.
and I'm okay with it, and I know that it's very hard for other people, and I also think about things from a practical sense, and I think this might maybe, for the listeners, if you are someone who it's really hard for you to, like, when you go shopping, not wanna buy everything, is practicality.
Mhm.
A big thing for me is, like, is it practical? Because if it's not, why am I gonna buy it? It has to have some kind of a function, otherwise, probably not gonna get it, right?
Mhm.
And there's times that I do, like I said, I've kind of fallen into just getting things that I'm not gonna use or something, and then I'm like, get rid of it the next day. I'm like, "Here, I just give it away." So I'm giving away stuff that I'm not ever using, which is doesn't make sense, just don't buy the damn thing. But well, but yeah, the simplicity, and I think it talks about that too. I wanted to say, um, it says that as such, the 23rd gift is an ongoing process in which more and more clutter is gradually removed from the inner and outer worlds. As your mind clears, spaciousness opens inside of you, allowing you to see things with great clarity.
Mm.
Another manifestation of the frequency is slowing down of your internal system and gradual lessening of your need to resolve everything in your life. So, and that's the big part of it too. It's like as within, so without. So, we're really talking about the external right now, but emotions are allowed to follow their natural course. Thoughts begin to have more gaps between them, and physical impulses are either observed objectively and dispassionately, or are indulged without guilt. So it's weird because and I understand this with so much clarity that because of my need to have space, visually, um, is that when you clear out your space internally, your space clears out too, and there's this, like, openness. Like, I used to love just, like, the feeling after, like, decluttering and cleaning.
Mm.
Like, it
Yeah.
just felt so spacious.
Yeah.
And it's right? And then it feels like you can accomplish anything.
Right.
It's just this really cool connection between the two.
Yeah. It's funny because right before I had read this chapter,
Yeah.
I had cleaned and rearranged furniture in my room and organized it. So, like, I don't have a very big bedroom, but I had made it so I had a nice big floor space at least,
Mhm.
compared to how like it had been arranged before. Um, and so, like, yeah, I had opened it up, it had felt good, and then I read the I read this chapter, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm kind of, in alignment with the transmutation and transcendence of like the shadow, the gift, and the city, the divine gift. Um, and what I really like about this is how it, like you had said, it's related to the throat chakra, right? The thyroid is where, like, the physiology of it. And so obviously we're talking about DNA and they come in pairs, right? Programming partners. And the partner to this one is the inner ear, and it's the shadow's deafness. And then it goes into insight and the epiphany for the gifts. And so this one kind of talks about like communication, right? The complexity and the simplicity of the way that we communicate and the way that we listen. So it kind of even goes beyond just the material like gains and things that we manifest and have around our environment, but really like the way that we communicate and the linguistics, and the patterns of like our speech and our brain. So I think it has like some really cool depth to it, and that really resonated with me because a lot of us, we talk and we have communication, especially when we're in relationships and we have partners, and it's always just wanting to be right. Trying to argue our point of view so that we're right. And it's not about being right, and it's about understanding. And so I thought that was a pretty cool part of this DNA strand, and moving through the shadow into the gift of it. And I think when you're able to have a clear mind and a clear, space so that you can just listen, and then you have clarity with your words, it allows for communication channels to open up and become more simple as well.
Yep. I agree. And I like the idea of the spaciousness, and then that's when you have an epiphany. And a
Hmm.
lot of the great thinkers, and people who come up with these great ideas, have the spaciousness. They have it. A lot of them will go to nature, or they'll take you know what I mean, a pause or a time out and go reflect in in nature, or wherever they need to go. And
Hmm.
it's because they need to clear the mind. And what I liked about this key too is that they talk about how the people of simplicity are just so in the moment, right? It's
Hmm.
not, they don't have this scripted thing. And maybe that's why it's so easy for me to just talk and talk and talk, because I just, I let things emerge as they emerge. I've never got on a podcast ever since I started with the script. I've
Right.
always just talked,
Right.
and whatever
We decided
emerged.
topic right as
And
we're
then we
about to
just
hit live.
yeah, and then we're just like, "Hey, let's talk about this." And sometimes it goes off in the weeds, don't get me wrong,
Right.
because sometimes
Oh
we're
yeah.
like, "Okay, I'm really off on the weeds in this one," but it's okay.
Right.
But to be able to, sit with an individual and just let things emerge as they do in conversation, and I think that's a beautiful piece of this. It's like, I don't have this scripted narrative, like, I'm not coming with some, agenda. um, I'm just letting things emerge as they do. And
Hmm.
that's what I liked about this key, is kinda like there's wits about it in some ways, you know what I mean? And people are like, "I can't do what you do." Like, I had people in the past like, "Well, what do you do with your podcast? How do you do it? What do you?" And I said, "Well, the reality is that I just do it. I don't sit there trying to figure out what I'm gonna say.
Right.
I just I just allow things to emerge as they emerge, but it's because my brain is clear. Like,
Right.
there's this clarity, and it's like, okay, things can just come up as they come up, and as things emerge, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, this," and then the neurons, right, they fire, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that, this, that," and then they see all the connections to a particular topic. So, it gets it does get complex. I'm not going to lie. We talk about the simplicity and the complexity, right? The
Right.
paradox that it becomes this complex web of like one tiny thing can lead to all these other open doors or whatever.
Mm,
Um, but then there is this like tiny simplicity in all of it too. You know what I
mm,
mean? Where you come back to this point where it's like simple. But it is true. And that's I mean, that's what I liked about it. With it, it's yeah, it's like it says here, things that you thought were problems somehow dissolve in their presence. And through their insight and clear language, difficult things become easy. That's
yeah.
another thing. It's that what we thought was difficult in the past, especially in the presence of someone like this, becomes easy. It becomes doable.
Mm,
And that's me. I'm like, it's doable. Like, what are you talking about? It's easy. It's right there. You know what I mean? That's
yeah.
why it's like it's not a hard thing. It's a very simple thing. So let's not overcomplicate it, right?
Right.
I like that too because I want to read this one because it's like what it's like to be around somebody like this. So, it says things that you thought were problems somehow dissolve in their presence, and through their insight and clear language, difficult things become easy. Above all, you begin to relax physically in their presence, and as this occurs, the mind lets go of the need to constantly resolve complexity. Simplicity is deeply practical. See, and that's the big piece, practical. I said that earlier in the material world, and these people are often very good at handling money, which is true. It is not that they know how to make money, but they know not to waste it. And that's
Right.
right. That's why I think I get sick when like if I spend money where it's not practical, I start to get disgusted.
Yeah.
Like literally, I want to throw up. And I'm like, "I can't do this anymore. It doesn't feel good." I don't feel right about it. It's
Right.
weird. It's like my body has that cue. It's not that they know how to make money. Oh, but they know where to okay. They're not, tight in any way, but they find the simplest solutions to things. They're masters of efficiency in that they can come up with highly original yet utterly practical ideas that lead to quantum leaps in productivity, which is what I was talking to you about the other day. Like,
Hmm.
there is a way to tap into simplicity in what we're doing, right? That's why I keep saying, like, I don't need to overcomplicate this. It's a
Right.
simple thing. And I just need to figure out what the simplicity is within this whole complexity.
Right.
Which is just like so hard. I don't know how to explain it. It's funny. Um, and then let's see, and then an aspect to mention about the key is that its incredible sense of humor, which of course, yes, in the way in which this gift operates can give rise to hilarious, spontaneous expressions that in some way capture the essence of a person or particular moment. See? And there was
Mm,
humor today. We're talking about not
yeah.
getting rid of the junk in the trunk. Just kidding.
Right.
Trunk, just not the junk in the trunk. Let's see. These people are so on the ball because they do not plan what they are going to say. They often take everyone by surprise. At lower frequencies, this trait can cause hurt and rejection. At higher frequencies, however, it usually causes laughter and awe. It is a matter of frequency. Um, let's see. Above all, people operating out of this key are wonderfully clear communicators and advisors. Their
Mm,
true genius lies in the economy of their language and the originality of their expression. Theirs is the noblest of all truths, the gift of simplicity, which I really like. And then it goes into the Buddha fever, and this is the city or the divine gift. And this one is really cool too. Um, which let me see. It talks a lot about the Buddha, right? The
yeah.
representation, transcendence of the yin yang path. The Buddhas refer to this as the middle path. So it talks about the middle path, the yin yang path, or the yang path is that of science, which can only go as far as a paradox, which is true in the absolute limit of scientific or logical thinking. The yin path is that of the artist or the poet. It comes closer to the center than the scientist, but still falls short. So we need kind of both of them, right? So the poet
Mm,
moves beyond the mind and strives to approach the mystery through the heart, but the heart and soul are bound by limits of their own longing. So and that's the hard part. And being in the material world, this is where it's really hard because they might taste the center for short periods, but they fall short of the ultimate because we're in a three-dimensional time space, right?
Yeah.
But the third way is the mystic, is what they talk about, who neither takes the path for of seeking nor the path of longing.
Right.
The mystic enters the bottom, sorry, into the mystery itself, which is what I was telling Pam at this point where I'm at, where it's
Right.
like
Both
the
of us. Yeah.
emergence. It's allowing things to emerge as they emerge, not trying to make up or trying to figure out or just letting it sort of emerge. And this is the hardest one I think to get through. It's where I think I know it's the phase that I'm in right now
Hmm.
because I have. I've practiced it. I've allowed things to just sort of show and reveal themselves the way they're going to reveal themselves, and surrender. But there's still that part, right? That's hanging on to sort of these past things of like, okay, I've got to, like, right now I'm painting or whatever, and that's getting me closer to what I would feel that essence, right? But really, it's just the stillness
Mm.
and just being and
Yeah.
letting things sort of just emerge, which is like the lotus, why the lotus has been such a big symbol for me right now at this time too. Be-
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's like just
Yeah.
let it emerge. Um, and that's complete surrender.
Right.
You know what I mean? To the
Absolutely.
mystery.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's like, and to get there, I mean, it sounds like that's why I love it. You have so many people like this, that, the other. I'm like, are they practicing? The practice of it is not easy. I've said this a trillion gazillion times on this podcast. It sounds great in words, but in practice, it's messy. I
Yeah.
mean, it is messy.
It gets
Become a
rough.
messy dress. No, I'm just kidding.
I just I wanted to take a second though really quick and kind of go back to the
Yeah.
shadow part.
Yeah, yeah, go
So
ahead.
what I like about this book is there's two elements to the shadow. There's a repressive nature and then there's a reactive nature.
Oh, yeah.
And I've
Yep, yep.
kind of gotten my own theories with the masculine and feminine energy that, we carry within and the dormancy and stuff. So I kind of definitely am able to read the book and know, like, okay, the repressive nature most times is me because that's like the feminine, and then every now and then I'll get to a gene and I'm like, okay, the reactive nature, right? Like, okay, that one I relate to. So it almost helps you understand what shadow like your DNA is programmed in because you can figure out which one you are. Um and so looking at the repressive nature of this gene key, it says it's dumb. In a repressive nature society, the expression of the 23rd shadow will really be tolerated. Wherever you see societies that keep others silent, you're seeing fear at work through this shadow. Depending on how acute the level of fear is, the individual or group will probably never express what they really think. Language will be held back, either through internal repression or external oppression. It is interesting that the modern meaning of the word dumb has come to refer to a lack of intelligence because that is often how such people are perceived. If you are choked by fear, you cannot speak clearly, if at all. And so these people slowly learn not to say what they really think, instead, lapsing into silence or superficiality. This is particularly true of children who have very oppressive parents. So for me, like, I never felt safe to speak out, especially when I was married. I was always told, like, my voice is too loud, I'm too much. Um, like, I just, he didn't want to engage in certain conversations with me. So it was like my voice, my language was always shut down. So I learned to just be in silence, right? So that's how I was able to understand my shadow, my DNA. And through that transmutation and transcendence, going into the gift, working through that. And it's almost like you go back and forth, right? From the shadow to the gift, shadow to the gift. And that's where the triggers come in. And you
Mhm.
heal that wound, you heal those triggers, and it empowers you more into the gift and then more into the city, the divine gift. And so that's where you're reading that. And I can totally resonate, like the mystic energy. That's been the last almost decade of my life.
Mhm. Mhm.
Looking at the reactive nature, it's fragmented. So the other side of this shadow is the expressive nature, which often cannot stop talking.
Hmm.
However, because there's a general mistiming within their neurology, they create enormous interference and fragmentation wherever they go. These are the people who always say the wrong thing or they say the right thing, but at the wrong time. The language pattern of such people tends to overcomplicate and miss the essential meaning of things. They spend an enormous amount of energy trying to be heard, only to find that they are constantly pushed away. These people tend to talk in circles, over explaining everything in an unconscious attempt to conceal the anger that lies within them at not being understood on a much deeper level.
That's
So,
correct. And
those are the
that's
two shadow elements. You're either going to have one personality type or the other. From what I have kind of read and understood, I think same thing with you. You find one more dominant
yeah.
within you.
And like the fragmented, right? Which is
Yeah,
like funny because we're like, and a lot of these were yin and yang and all of these
right.
kind of keys, right? Which the fragmented, as you know, and I still have a lot of words. I'm never going to run out of words. Okay. I just like to talk. I've always liked to talk. Okay. But I have worked on the timing and the misfiring and then the ability for people to understand me on a deep level. So that, I mean, it's almost to the T. And when I read this the first time, I was like, "Well, that doesn't really make sense." Now that I'm rereading it, I'm like, "Okay, I get it. I get what it's trying to say about how my experience was in terms of this because I do fragment things.
Mm,
I would come up and I would be like I always felt like my brain was working faster than people could keep up, and I think that it sounded more like arrogance than I wanted people to understand what I was trying to say.
mm,
But then it's true because I didn't have all the information, so a lot of it was, like, I had to learn how to just listen fully
mhm,
before I said anything. That was the practice that I had to come up with myself so that I can give a response that made sense,
mhm.
and you see what I'm saying?
Right,
And so I think with that, the fragmentation makes a lot of sense to me now that you just read it and I reread it, I was like, "Oh, no wonder people were so pissed off at me all the time." Like, I would just go shatter, you know? It's like so people would be doing something, I'd come in and I'd be the disruptor,
right,
and everything would just then be just right, but everything that I was saying was on point, but at the wrong time.
right,
I was kinda, like, ahead of my time, right? Like, it's like, this is not the right time to insert it. You've gotta let things work and then insert it when it's the right time for it.
right,
And that was hard for me because I'm like, everything would just be firing. You know how it says they're just so right on? I'm like, "Oh, here, 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 here." But then I didn't have all of the back stuff of like, "Well, what about this, this, and this? Oh, shoot. Right. We gotta do that before we can get to that." You know what I
right.
mean? Like, duh.
Well, it
Let me
makes
slow
sense
down. Yeah.
with the partner being the inner ear and
Yep.
having the deafness, like, so them the pair of the DNA working together where
Yeah, yeah,
you got
yeah.
to go from one to the other and balance them and heal them. But I see the reactive nature as the masculine energy and the
Mhm.
repressed nature as the feminine energy because we've had conversations in other podcast episodes. I think especially last week we were talking about this, right? Where everybody has both energies, but one's more dominant than the
Mhm.
other. And
Correct.
so looking at the dormant one is what you kind of have to heal and bring up into balance, right? And so for me, it's like a lot of repressive nature and in my feminine. And then when I can see that little bit of the masculine pop up in some of these, it allows me to understand a bigger part of how my DNA is programmed through these shadows. And it really explains the people that end up coming into your life, right? Who are kind of mirroring in these polar opposites
Yeah,
because
for sure.
they're firing and triggering your DNA so that you can get out of the shadow and heal and move on into the gift and transcend. And I think a lot of us in the spiritual kind of community, we're very much aware that our DNA is being transmuted. We know we're going from an oxygen body to a crystalline body. That even the 2 strand is going into a 12 strand. So there's evolution happening on a conscious state within the DNA. And so this for me was just huge to understand what was happening. And what I love about this book is that you can use it as an oracle. So I had a few moments where I'm like, what is going on with this situation in my life right now? Like, what DNA is really wanting to be triggered and healed? And then I would just flip through the book and open up the chapter. And the first time I did that, I found like the one answer. And then like a week later, I did it again and I opened it and it was the programming partner. So it was like the two times I used that as an oracle and I opened the book and it was the DNA pair. So I'm like, okay, that's not random. There's a deeper lesson that really is coming through. And that's what I really like about this book. Yeah, it's been really cool and just kind of reading it and taking what resonates and just seeing, I think, beyond the day to day of human experience and understanding there's a bigger, complex structure to the universe, right? That is mirrored within our body, that's programmed and wired within us, right? Like that myth story of what we're trying to kind of heal through and become. Um, so I have personally been able to have a lot of breakthroughs and understanding by this book.
Yep, me as well.
Mm.
And I wanted to say, okay, so for instance, or I just wanted to read this last one because I think we're coming up on an hour. Try to keep it to an hour because we get so excited. We're like, ah. But the last one is above all, people operating at the out of the 23rd gift are wonderfully clear communicators and advisors. Their true genius lies in the economy of their language and the originality of their expression. Theirs is the noblest of all truths, the gift of simplicity. So I think, and it could communication, and we'll end here, but communication is a big important piece, but you can't get your communication has to be or gets to be, I won't say have to, gets to be clear if you are to create the life that you want. And that starts with the spaciousness of the mind.
Mhm.
So that what's emerging, right, within you is sort of in the moment, right? And that takes you clearing out your mental space and the space around you. So you have to declutter the mind and the space around you. And that spaciousness that exists, that open space that exists as you communicate with another individual, things will naturally emerge. The connection naturally emerges between you and that other individual rather than having an agenda. And the true essence of both individuals will actually connect. And it's really beautiful to see because the individuals, I can say it from this because I fully embody this key. You know what I mean? Is that
Mhm.
what I get from people just being the embodiment of this is that people feel comfortable around me. People will tell me their whole life story and be like, "I just feel, like, comfortable around you. I feel safe around you. I feel." And it's because there's no agenda on my end. I have no agenda. I'm just there to be there, and hold space.
Mhm.
So that's how it is with people, but there's this spaciousness too that a person can open up to me and fully share themselves because I'm not cluttered in my own self either. So
Right.
there's this space, there's a big enough space for them to share their whatever's going on with them. It's a pretty, and I'm really working with fully articulating the experience of this particular gene key because rereading it again is like, oh yeah, like now I understand a lot of different things, um, and why individuals feel really comfortable with opening up. And I think that's a lot. It's because I'm authentic, obviously, and I'm open too, but I think it's because I hold this spaciousness.
Mm.
And I don't have an agenda. Like, I tell people I really I love you. Like, I'm not gonna I don't whatever's going on in your life, I'm not here to judge that. But whatever emerges in our dialogue, you're safe to say it. You know what I mean? There's that
Absolutely.
safety.
Oh, yeah,
So,
I've definitely opened up to you. I'm like, "Why the hell am I telling you this?" Like, it just feels yeah, no, you do have an energy about you that I feel like I know I'm safe to, like, cry to you and tell you, some deep wounds or, things that I haven't shared with other people. And I'm grateful for that. And I know like you're holding space and you're listening and stuff. So I absolutely agree. Especially for someone who had right the repressed. I had to like shut off and I couldn't feel safe to ever, there was always judgment or ridicule or, emotional and verbal abuse on the other end of some of the relationships that I went through. um, so you just kind of learn to shut it down.
right. And yeah, and it's really cool. Like I feel very I really love this key, honestly, and it's reminding me of like get back to the simple, even more simple. You know what I mean? Get rid of stuff, get rid of more stuff, and keep it simple. And
Hmm.
that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I will say, like, kind of just going away from this is like as within, so without. If your space is totally cluttered, declutter as much as you can. That'll give you some mental space to declutter. And if you can declutter the space within your mind and create spaciousness, right, then you're able to co create or allow things to emerge as opposed to forcing things to happen, basic.
Hmm.
So, so there you have it. Anything else, Pam, before we go?
It's 11:11.
There you go. Divine timing.
Right.
Right. There you go. It's 11:11.
I don't know.
I don't know. The angels are talking to us.
Right.
Um,
Some new
so
beginnings.
it's a new beginning. Go out with a new beginning. We like that. Go out with a new beginning. Go declutter, and declutter your mind and find that spaciousness and tranquility there.
Hmm.
That's in the space that lays between that clutter. So there you have it. Follow us on Women of Consciousness. You can go to our website, womenofconsciousness.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram. We will be holding goddess circles. We'll say that again. Next one is healing, harnessing and healing sexual energy, which is really going to be a fun thing. And the Eventbrite will be up there, so you guys can register. It is a goddess circle, so a circle of beautiful, powerful, divine women coming together to harmonize together. So there you go. Have a great
Absolutely.
day. We
Have a
love
great
you.
day. Thanks. Bye.